What are you doing? What are you doing? You certainly aren't drinking coffee, but you should be. And if you aren't willing to listen to this advice, maybe I can shame you into listening to it. But you know I don't have to shame you because it's coffee. All right, that whole thing was a little melodramatic, but we do have a sponsor, and they are Sparkplug Coffee. They offer the freshest beans in Canada, which are fairly traded premium Arabica beans. If you would prefer to sip decaf or half calf, they've got you covered. You can choose from many blends and roasts, none of which contain the spit of a sassy barista. Plus you can get rotating seasonal blends, which also have very little spit. Practically none. Sparkplug delivers to the United States and, of course, Canada within a week, and they even offer free shipping to those who live in our home country of good old Canada. But listen to this next part because it's really important. Membership in the Autopilot Coffee Club will get you so many perks and deals. You can even save money on every order, which the occasional orderer just isn't able to enjoy. You can also customize your orders to get them when it suits you. If you're on the warpath against bad men, maybe you don't need a lot of Java, so you can cancel or even just pause for a while. And if you call this a Coffee of the Month club, certain vengeance seekers might seek, well, some vengeance. Okay, that's a little much, but they won't agree with your assessment, and they might throw some texts out to some people, texts, to let them know of their disapproval. So put away your little notebook full of assholes and get on your device so you can type in sparkplug.coffee/HYES. That promo code of HYES will save you a healthy 20% off your next order. And if you order with that code, you help us out because we get a little scratch. But we can't be worthy of any of that unless we do a good show. So Andrew Luther, please strike up your one-man band and play us in.
And action! Have you ever seen
Promising Young Woman? Hi, you crazy kids, and thank you for spending even a little bit of your day with the 507th rendition of Have You Ever Seen? We review usually classic movies around here, and we spoil them every Monday morning. I'm the lunkhead who's doing his best to understand women in a way he hadn't before, #MeToo, Ryan Ellis. And here's that fake drunk avenging angel of the morning angel. My wife, who's shown a lot of promise, and I look forward to seeing what she has to offer in the future, Bev.
That's me.
So the coming attractions trivia for this week's picture are last in Revenge Month, Promising Young Woman. Emerald Fennell and Chloe Zhao were the second and third women to get nominated for Oscars for writing, directing, and producing a single movie, and it was in the same year of 2020, well, 2021, but for the 2020 movies. And that's also weird because Nomadland really was released in 2021. Anyway, Zhao got her noms and wins for Nomadland, while Fennell won for writing this movie. Who was the first woman to get nominated for those same three awards, writing, producing, and directing?
It has to be Coppola, right?
You're correct. Sofia Coppola for Lost in Translation, who, like Fennell, won for her script. And while I think this was a good choice for the award, Promising Young Woman, I would have preferred to see Minari, or Sound of Metal win. But this is a good choice.
Embarrassment of Riches. Those are three excellent screenplays.
I was loving Coppola one. You hear this shout in the audience. We talked about this on Lost in Translation, and I think I corrected this later on, because I thought maybe it was Francis or Dad. But Nicolas Cage was sitting right beside his uncle Francis, and I think it was him. Because as soon as you hear Susan Sarandon say, Sophie, or yeah! And it sounds like Nicolas Cage's voice, now that I've heard it many times since. So, Two Promising Young Women Who End Up Dead was released by Universal and Focus Features on Christmas Day, 2020. Ho, ho, ho. The film ended up grossing a little less than $19 million worldwide, which isn't too bad considering we weren't even a year into the pandemic and people seeing movies on the big screen just wasn't a thing yet. But Bev, the movie is, 2.5-ish years old, so please remind us what it's about and give us a skinny on Promising Young Woman.
Carey Mulligan is Cassie, 30 years old, living with her parents, working at a coffee shop, and obsessed with luring creeps into traps to make them think twice about taking advantage of women. But when Cassie learns that the man who raped her best friend in med school is living his best life with no consequences, she launches an elaborate revenge scheme that targets not just him, but everyone who looked the other way, made excuses for him, or otherwise made his crimes permissible. Her well-laid plans go awry during her coup de grace, and the rapist who sparked her whole revenge mission gets the upper hand and kills her, ending her quest for justice while sealing his own fate.
At his wedding. So, in a nutshell, Wedding Crasher. Apparently the original ending was Cassie dying and then burning her, and I guess the idea would be she's paying for trying to do all these things. Women never really truly win.
And he gets away with it.
And
He gets away with not just raping Nina, but with murdering Cassie.
But Fennell, or maybe somebody convinced her, I don't know what their logic was, they did change it, and then she's got this delayed text thing. I didn't know you could do that. Maybe it's a sci-fi thing with texting.
It's very convenient, and the timing's suspiciously perfect. How, before she even died, would she know the exact moment that the police would crash the wedding? It's almost so cutesy. And sometimes I think that when directors receive notes that they don't like, they almost make it over the top. Almost this over-the-top, cheerful, successful, happy ending tagged on, this little epilogue that feels...
Sci-fi?
No, beyond sci-fi. It's almost...
Just because it's not believable.
It's silly, and it betrays the tone of the film, in my opinion. I'll say right now, I love this movie. I think that the epilogue is the biggest misstep of the film.
I agree.
The only real problem with the movie is the last 5-10 minutes.
It does feel bad tonally. The Notebook is jammed with all these guys she's done this to. Somehow she's never been hurt or killed. Maybe she's been hurt. We don't know that. That could have happened and she recovered. But she's never been killed from some of these guys who maybe would have said, you con me? Fuck you, bitch. I'm going to kill you. But also, she's 30. So she's been doing this for a little while, unless she only started doing it fairly recently. But then the Notebook has all these entries, so she's done it for so long. That's a dark thing and a psychotic thing. And maybe the most important scene in the whole movie is when she meets with Molly Shannon, and we are hours away from watching Molly Shannon host Saturday Night Live. So she's back for us. Of course, this movie's years old now, but she plays Nina's mother. I don't know that she knows what Cassie's been doing all this time. I don't think she does. Regardless, she's telling her, let it go.
Yeah, she knows Cassie has not moved on.
She's at least
all.
not well, yes,
Yeah.
right. So even just the sense of talking about this and dwelling on this, I think that's what Nina's mom means. And Molly Shannon's cameo is so important because she doesn't know what she's really telling her, I don't think. Even if she does know, that has power, but especially if she doesn't know, as noble as you might think it is, you are putting yourself in danger. The whole notion behind, you look that way, you wanted it, is bullshit. We know that. But she is flicking the cobra and flicking the cobra and flicking the cobra for, it has to be maybe years by now, to be 30 years old and still doing this. And whether or not Nina's mom knows, she's saying, just move on. And that's what Cassie does for a little while. Until...
after that moment.
The person that she tried to fuck over out of revenge, Madison, Alison Brie's character, brings her the phone with the video. And that wouldn't have happened if Cassie didn't try to get revenge on Madison, which is a great piece of writing by Fennell.
I liked it a lot, and I respected it a lot the first time we saw it.
The plot, you mean?
Just the movie in general.
I thought you loved the movie.
I love it now. I liked it a lot. I probably loved it. And that I found it so refreshing, but I don't think I fully appreciated it until we watch it for the second time and you know what's going to happen. And then from the beginning, you can pay attention to Bo Burnham's character. You can pay attention to Cassie's simmering, seething rage. You notice things in the second viewing that make you realize this screenplay really did deserve that Oscar. There really is this clockwork of not just the plot, less so the plot. The plot gets a little fantastical. There's plenty of stuff that's a little difficult to believe. More like the emotional journey that she goes on, that other characters go on. It's not just intricate and well structured. It is so honest. No other revenge film would dare to delve into the truth of the human psyche the way this film does. And not just in the way that Cassie is such a flawed protagonist, but in the way that the villains are such sympathetic villains, even though they are villains. Even though it's in this phony space and there are lots of elements that feel fantastical, it still creates a much more accurate picture of the world, of how villains act in the world and who villains are in the world and who heroes are in the world.
Well, Cassie's getting revenge for somebody else, and we talked about that on Death Proof or Revenge at some point this month, where it's usually in this genre in the 70s that men would do it on behalf of their daughter or their wife or their girlfriend or a friend or whoever it was. And sometimes, but not often, it was the woman. I guess actually blaxploitation did it because, of course, of Coffee and not Jackie Brown, but what was it called again? Foxy Brown with Pam Grier in the 70s. So yeah, there were times when women were the ones getting revenge. Actually, with the Corman movies and those blaxploitation films, that probably was women more often than not. But Hollywood, no, it was more like, "Oi, Bronson, getting revenge for my wife," that kind of thing. But here you've got a woman getting revenge not only for herself, like in I Spit on Your Grave, or Revenge, or even death proof, but for somebody else, her best friend, granted, but this is years ago. As we just said, the mother of the friend is saying, move on, live your life, and she wasn't able to do it. Now, maybe she is, at least briefly. I guess maybe the lion is quiet until it's brought to life again. We'll talk about that in a second. But I do like that notion that it wasn't her that was hurt or raped or anything else. It's her revenge for somebody else. Fennell cast good guys, people who are known that way.
Yeah, on purpose.
The one who committed the rape, Christopher Lowell, who played Bash so nicely. He was such a good guy.
Lovable.
On Glow. And I think in general he's played likable guys. Adam Brody and Sam Richardson. Sam Richardson on Veep is one of my favorite TV characters ever. Richard Splett, love him. But in this movie, he was going to do what Adam Brody was going to do in the beginning until the "what are you doing" moment in the very opening. And then Richardson recognizes who she is when she owns up to the fact that she's not drunk when Bo Burnham sees them. Bo Burnham was thought of as a good guy. Christopher Mintz-Plasse from, I don't know about good guy, but Superbad, he's certainly
But he's McLovin. He's so harmless.
True.
Like, they're all
well, Kick-Ass has got a little bit of a villain thing on.
Okay. But there's still actors that we associate with nice guys, the type of guy that we wouldn't think twice about taking a ride home from. People that are also often romantic leads. Not Christopher Mintz-Plasse. More Adam Brody for that he's just supposed to be this romantic lead that we root for.
Burnham could be. He hasn't really acted that much, but he would be too.
I love Bo Burnham so much. He is amazing in this movie. He's such a Renaissance man. He does so many different kinds of things. I know you love his directing. 8th Grade is one of your favorite movies of the century, right? Yeah,
I love that movie.
It's such a wonderful film. I have a parasocial relationship with him, and he is one of those people that I am terrified will find out something bad about him.
He's your Hanks.
Yeah, he's my Hanks.
Not Tom, not Bo.
Yeah. Even if we can't relate to having discovered something terrible about somebody we know, I think we can all, in the parasocial way, very much relate to the resistance to believing something bad about someone we like who's famous.
Explain parasocial to me right now.
Parasocial
Maybe to some of our
like,
listeners.
I don't have a relationship with Bo Burnham, but I feel like I know him. It's kind of more so in the age of social media that we can feel like we're part of these people's lives. They are strangers, but it can feel a little easy to forget sometimes. Okay. So that when you find out, a great example is Bill Cosby.
The best example.
We all had a parasocial relationship with Bill Cosby. I grew up watching him. He felt like a dad. It was very hard for me to accept the truth. Not that I ever denied that these women were telling the truth, but I lived in a bit of a state of denial for a little while until I truly couldn't anymore because I didn't want to accept what I was hearing, but this man that I had these really warm, safe feelings and that I associate so strongly with my childhood. It was very troubling to me to discover what a terrible person he had been this whole time.
A black icon who transcended race, really.
Yeah, so many
Which
things
OJ did to some degree too, actually.
You know, like that House of Cards took a lot of things down with it when it fell, and we discovered what a monster he is. But like the villains in Promising Young Woman, he contained multitudes. He was more than just a rapist.
Well, so many with him. That's part of what I've said to you before. You hear one and think, I don't believe that. 2, okay, that's not good. 3, what? 4, people can't see me, but my head sinks when I do this impression for bad, which is, okay, Jesus Christ, it's 10, it's 20, it's 50, it's 275, where the hell the number was with Cosby. You gotta believe it long before that number. That's part of the problem. Of course, Harvey, nobody really liked him anyway, so he's out of this. But Spacey, too, he was a beloved actor. Yeah. And no one wanted to believe at first that he could do these kinds of things.
Woody Allen, Michael Jackson.
Not as beloved with Woody Allen, maybe Michael Jackson.
Well, but Woody Allen is beloved by a lot of people.
Yeah,
like, a lot of people still don't really accept what seems to be pretty evidently true, that the man was a predator. Even these examples aren't great examples to compare to the villains in Promising Young Woman because those were serial abusers.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the villains in Promising Young Woman, these were crimes of opportunity, or in the case of Al, who's the main rapist, it was peer pressure, a lot of drinking, a time and place in his life. Also, the movie doesn't get too deep into it, but a time and place in the world when this kind of behavior wasn't just overlooked, it was the culture. I don't know how well you remember how totally pornified culture was in the aughts. And I think automatically of Girls Gone Wild, which was a repulsive, fucked up thing that aired on television. They played ads on television. They would play them late at night, and you could see in these infomercials really destructive, terrible, vile behavior that was part of the ad for the product they were selling, which was videotapes of girls being coerced into doing sexual things and getting naked. And I'm sure there were lots of them that were into it, but I very clearly recall seeing clips of girls who were being very heavily coerced, and to the point where I think the coercion and their resistance was part of the appeal of the product. And that was the world that we lived in. And Emerald Fennell is very interested in not just vilifying the person who committed the act, but vilifying and getting retribution on the entire world that took part in allowing something like this to happen. Because Cassie doesn't let anybody off the hook. There's, of course, the rapist.
She lets one off the hook. Alfred Molina.
The only person in the whole movie.
Grovels, too. Doesn't just apologize, but grovels.
Yes. And it's such an interesting scene. It's such a great scene. One, because he is Alfred Molina and he is a star.
Who played her dad in An Education.
Oh my God. Another piece of interesting casting. Probably was intentional. He's the worst offender, in my opinion.
Because he defended Al during this whole time in college.
And not just Al, but lots of rapists he admitted, and that he bullied Cassie, and a lot of victims... Sorry, yes, he bullied Nina. And as a lot of victims say...
I like that, by the way. That was a good slip-up. Because that's one of the fascinating things about this movie, is that, yes, Nina was the victim. We never see her.
No, I don't think even see what she looks like.
Because we don't go into Molly Shannon's house. We don't see a picture there. I don't think we see a picture in Cassie's house. Maybe we do. I can't think of an example of that. So she's somebody who is this driving force behind the whole story, but we never even see her.
We do see a picture of them as children.
Okay, but not in college.
No, we don't know what she looks like.
And we don't see the video. We hear it. Mm-hmm. So the movie confirms it. I was thinking about that a few hours ago before we sat down. That I both love the idea that we don't see the video, but we hear it, so we know it's real, although with Cassie's mindset. But then Madison brings over a phone that says, here's the video of this. So, okay, we know that there's actually a video of Nina being raped by Al when she was drunk and people were cheering it on. But it would have been fascinating, too, if we didn't get confirmation, because then you get that whole taxi driver thing. Okay, so Sybil Shepherd's real in that movie, and they go on a date. But when he makes that phone call where the camera pans over, is he talking to anybody? Maybe the guy was so far gone already that he imagined that. We already said before the very end of that movie, I think, I've said for many years, I don't think is real. That's a character you can't trust. Played so well by a great actor in his prime, made by a terrific director, one of the most underrated, not underrated, it's very rated, but a great directorial movie that didn't get a nomination for De Niro, and it should have, Scorsese, and it should have. Anyway, the point being that we can't really trust his movie, and that's good. That's the way it was made, that's the point. I think that's what's going on here, too. And if we hadn't heard the video and see Cassie's reaction, now she's back in.
And see Ryan's reaction, too. She blackmails him into giving her the address.
And that's when he turns. But that's my point, is that if there wasn't a confirmation that there was actually a video on this, you could almost believe that Cassie not made it up, but wasn't right. And yet she's going after people that maybe didn't do anything.
She's not right. There's so much trauma that she's far gone, right?
No, she's not right in the head. I agree, but she's not.
I don't think.
But she's correct for her reasons.
Yeah. But I also don't think that there's anything in the movie that isn't really happening. I don't think that the movie ever suggests that we shouldn't trust what our eyes are telling us.
But I'm saying it would have been fascinating if they didn't make it literal. But even literal is not entirely literal because we don't see it.
It would have absolutely been interesting, and that would have been a different take.
It's smart that she does confirm for the audience, though, that this woman is doing this for a reason. It's not, she's making this up, women are full of shit. I think it's Al that even says she wanted it, and maybe Nina said she did. I like to fuck you. And then was passed out while and we don't see it, whatever he's doing to her, and people are cheering it on. But I think Fennell was smart in making it that it did happen, and Cassie sees it, and Ryan sees it. So we don't need to see it. That's probably what the reason is. She doesn't want to go that far. She doesn't need to go that far.
It is a common complaint about revenge films, especially. We talked about this so much when we talked about revenge, that often when it centers around the rape of a woman...
We see it graphically.
We see it graphically, and that's part of the point and the appeal of the film. It's supposed to appeal grotesquely a little to men who want to see that kind of thing. And it also serves this function of turning the rapist into this vile, mustache-twisting villain. Not even mustache-twisting, an animal. The men who commit the crimes, typically in a revenge movie, are so evil, and there's nothing else about them. They have no other personality. They are just monsters.
Yep.
So not only is it easy to just enjoy the revenge, just to get the titillating emotion of enjoying watching this monster getting taken down, it also gives every man who's watching that movie a nice clear pass to say, well, I'm not anything like him. But especially given the number of different kinds of villains in this movie, not just every man, but every woman can see themselves a little bit. At least sympathize.
In the audience?
In the audience, yeah.
I'm glad you say that.
Of course. Well, the movie's not easy on the women.
Madison was there, obviously, recording this.
And Madison is going along with it. She laughed at the video. She was just going... Maybe she wasn't just going along to get along, but she was certainly like, this woman's pain, this woman's suffering is not important enough to me to make me risk my social standing in this group. Look what her social standing has gotten her. A rich husband. That means she doesn't have to work. She's got everything she wants in life. She's got her twins. She's got her bored housewife that she secretly loves and is bragging about. She can day drink. She can wear beautiful suits, and she can feel like she's won at life. And she's got the invitation to Al's wedding. It's interesting. She doesn't go to the wedding. You don't see her there.
Okay.
But Ryan does.
Yeah.
So all of these people benefited from looking the other way and just staying with the main group and pretending there was nothing wrong with what was happening and laughing along with some people's more extreme behavior.
When they were also a lot younger. We can't forget that, too. They were, compared to us, kids.
What does she say? If I hear that one more time, because they're in med school. Now...
I think they're kids.
Yeah, I know. I'm 45, so to me, they are kids. They would be about 23 years old, roughly, like in their early mid-20s. Now, am I proud of the way I behaved when I was 23? Absolutely not. Did I act like an idiot? Yeah, 100%. Did I have some opinions I'm ashamed of now? Yes, I did.
Even until you were 33 or older.
We always are going to change. We're always going to be a little bit ashamed of opinions we had 10 years ago and then even more 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Do I think I would have behaved like Madison when I was 23 years old? Honestly, I don't, but maybe at 19. There's probably a point in my life where my need to fit in, my need to get along, my lack of empathy, I'd be like, oh, I could never get that drunk at a party or whatever it is.
Most people don't want to make a scene. They just do not want to disturb something. And also... The movie is set so many years before. That was the mentality that men certainly had, and it wasn't just men, and you're saying the same thing, women too, which is, well, maybe she did say because Al says she wanted it. He could be lying to Cassie when she confronts him at the bachelor party, but it's entirely possible that Nina said something that suggested that she did want it. Maybe she wanted it an hour before she got really loaded. And there was also a time when a lot of people, not just men, didn't realize that if a woman is not really with it, you probably shouldn't pursue it. There was a comedy scene in a movie made by two benign, apart from the pot smoking, I guess you could say legends, Cheech and Chong. I think it's Up in Smoke. At the end of the movie, Cheech, I think it's a fantasy sequence. Yeah, it is, because he wakes up from a dream. Cheech is carrying a woman, and she's passed out or something. He lays her down. She's beautiful. He tweaks her nipples, and then he pulls up her tunic type thing, and then pulls up his own, and the suggestion is he's going to just take her. But then Chong wakes him up from the dream, and he's mad about getting woken up for the dream. I know that sounds awful now, but that's the kind of thing that would have been, it was obviously funny back then.
Emerald Fennell said that there's not one thing that happens in this movie that hasn't been shown in a comedy.
Shown, yes.
Yeah, that we've laughed at. So that's a great example. Animal House, another great example. The hero of the film has this hilarious and serious debate about whether or not he should go ahead and rape a passed out 15-year-old girl. Of course, 16 Candles, one of the most famous examples. Anthony Michael Hall, the cute nerd, gets sent off with the hot blonde cheerleader type who is not just drunk, but I think fucked up on her mom's Valium or something as well. It's strongly implied that he takes advantage of it, and it's all played for comedy. Even more recent films, it's a running joke in Superbad that the guys are trying to take advantage of these girls.
Jonah Hill
when they're drunk.
especially, yeah.
He keeps talking. He's like, you've got to get these girls when they're drunk. You've got to take advantage of the fact they're going to be
Emma Stone would
wasted.
never fuck me unless she was drunk.
Of course they do the right thing because it's the 21st century by the time that movie's made.
I still am a little bit surprised, though, they did the right thing even then. 2007?
Yeah, and they still get the girls in the end.
Yeah.
There's no no consequences. I like that movie. I find it really funny. But I remember finding Jonah Hill's character so over the top vile. Nobody would like him. And certainly Emma Stone would not give this guy the time of day, even if he was hot. And he's not. He's not as hot as Emma Stone by a million. But it was definitely just played for straight comedy. I'm sure there's more examples I can't even think of right now. Girls Gone Wild was not that long ago.
Yeah, but Jonah Hill and Michael Cera are the nice guys, and so is Christopher Mintz-Plasse. Now, when he's in bed with the redhead, that seems, as I recall, pretty consensual. I think it's in. That was his big debut. The other two had acted for a little while before that, but that's part of what Fennell's going for here. These aren't the bros. A movie you didn't mention from the 80s, same year I think as 16 Candles, Revenge of the Nerds.
Straight
where
up
one of the
rape,
nerds,
yeah.
the heroes of the movie, convinces Betty that she's with her boyfriend, Stan, the Ted McGinley character, and he gives her oral and obviously does it well. When he pops up and shows his own nerdy face, she is outraged for a second, but then, you're really good at that, so keep going. Back in that time frame, that was funny. I was 10. Well, I didn't see that movie until maybe a year or two later, so I was probably 12 or something like that. That's one of the reasons why this became such a common thing in films, is that it worked out, because either in the moment or later in the film, the girl liked the guy, and it did work out, like in Superbad and Revenge of the Nerds. At the end, she says, I'm in love with the nerd, because he was good at giving oral. But the way he did it, we certainly don't think that's okay now, because the world's changed so much.
It goes without saying that these are all movies that were written, produced, directed by men. We are starting to see this narrative change, partly because of pushback and partly because women are just getting way bigger seats at the table and probably are feeling much bolder about pushing back when we see stuff that's very uncool. And while we're talking about the way media accepts, I'll just say it, rape culture, I know it's a phrase that's been used to death. This movie is so much about rape culture, it's impossible not to just call it that. But there's a lot of rom-com tropes that fit into rape culture in a much more subtle way that Emerald Fennell also squeezes into this movie. The romance aspect with Bo Burnham and Carey Mulligan.
He asks her out, she says no. He asks her out, she says no.
He's persistent, He's cute, he's charming, he wears her down. She says, no thank you, I'm not dating right now. She spits in his coffee, she gives him a fake phone number, and he just keeps persisting and persisting and persisting. And we're so trained to be like, but that's what a nice guy does, that's
He doesn't
charming.
raise the beatbox in the air outside her window, but he might have done that.
Won't let it go. But it's charming, it's romantic. Of course, we learn later he's not one of the good guys, or is he, or isn't he? I think he's just like every one of us, he's in the gray area. I read a lot of reviews that were like, and then you discover that Ryan is a villain. I'm like, but is he? He has a moment of weakness. He has several moments of weakness. If you can't empathize with the choices he makes, and I'm not saying they're the right choices, I'm not saying this what I would do in those circumstances, but I'm saying self-preservation is a hell of a drug. So when he's in that party and he sees all of his friends who will be his colleagues, who will be his network when he finishes med school, doing something and he just doesn't know how to react in the moment, so he has this nothing reaction and then just tries to stay out of it when it's all said and done.
It also sounds like when this is all going on, maybe in the room, it may have taken a long time, he walked in.
Yes.
He didn't know any of this was going on. He maybe just arrived at that party. But the way it sounds on that video, which we don't see, is that he walked in and sees this. And I know that everybody that knows everything would say, well, I would have swarmed in like Batman and I would have saved that girl from that Al guy.
I hope I would.
Especially if I'm 6'12",
Yeah.
where the hell Bo Burnham's height is. But it's so easy to judge that when you're not in somebody's shoes anyway, but especially in this circumstance when he wasn't involved in any of this. Hey, Ryan, take a look at this. What's going on? Oh, that looks like fun. He doesn't know the context of anything, but it's easy to judge something you can't understand, especially when it sounds like he wasn't watching it all progress. It was already happening, and he saw it. And you could say, he should have saved her, but that's so easy to say.
Or he should have taken her side when she decided to try and get Al kicked out of school or just have some kind of consequences for Al.
Yeah.
He should have spoken up and said, no, I was there, I saw it happen. But at that point, he's already done nothing in the room. So his hands are tied and that he looks like an asshole if he says, I was there and I saw it.
Right.
And I did nothing at the time. There's like a tree of decisions.
Yeah.
If you want to pretend you would have done all the right things, you're thrust into the situation too. I know it's not like I'm defending rapists here, but I think this is what's so smart about the movie is that good luck having an easy answer.
She made a movie that isn't easy. That's one reason we wanted to cover it. And it makes sense in Revenge Month, because if it had just been Bronson That might have been interesting, especially when you cast this slight English woman playing this American blonde who was criticized for not being hot enough, even though Carey Mulligan, I think, looks quite great in this movie.
How hot do you have to be when you're low-hanging fruit at the bar? Give me a break.
Well, Margot Robbie's a producer, and then the speculation by the reviewer was all about how was it supposed to be her. And yes, Margot Robbie's a 19 out of 10. That's also a very subjective thing. A lot of people might say Carey Mulligan's the 19 and Margot Robbie's the 4 or something like that.
If she's not a 10 out of 10, she's a 9. And she looks incredible in this movie. She's got that big, luscious blonde hair. Yeah. Oh, let's talk about the very girly look. And not even hyper feminine, almost arrested development. She doesn't just look like a girly girl. She looks like a doll.
But somebody who also still looks quite young anyway, who's not young anymore, as in not 22 or something. So she's probably always, like Natalie Portman, going to look at least a little young.
Mm-hmm. Didn't we look up her height because she's standing up next to Bo Burnham and he's 6'7"? She's like 5'5" or something. She's just very lithe. She's very...
Yeah, that's not that short for a woman, is it?
Very small. She just looks small.
So I'm barely taller than she is. I've got 2 inches on her.
Yeah.
Or a lot more pounds.
And it's not just her clothes, it's her furniture. Her house looks like a dollhouse.
Yeah, the pink suitcase they buy her parents do for her birthday.
She puts ribbons in her hair. There's something so girly about her, but then there is something so aggressively feminine about her. You know, when we talked about revenge, I said that when Jen gets back to the real world, if she can carry on living her life, she'll be a changed woman, but she will still dress the same. That she will still wear bright colors and be very girly. And you were like, no, absolutely not. But what I was picturing was Cassie.
I hope you're right, by the way, in both cases. If this is the way they want to live their lives, they should live their lives that way.
This is who they are. I think there's also this tendency in a lot of revenge films, women who exact revenge. You know, The Bride is a great example. Jen in Revenge
Kill Bill,
is
you mean?
in Kill Bill. You have these women who are battle-hardened by trauma, be it rape or, in the case of Kill Bill, the betrayal of Bill. They become man-like. They dress like men, they use men's weapons, they fight like men, they're stronger than men. They just become more masculine. Whereas Cassie, she refuses to become masculine at all. She's using the weapons of a woman in that she just takes these people down with words most of the time. It's a little deceptive if you watch the trailer. You probably expected the whole movie to be about her luring men into this situation and then turning around on them, where it's actually just more like her James Bond introduction, where we see this about her and it informs us about her, but it's really not a big part of the film.
She's been doing it for a long time, but we don't see that much of it.
We really jump into the middle of her story, so we jump into the story that she's been doing this thing, but it's
almost
not
the end of her story.
Yeah, but when she has these men dead to rights, she's not hurting them. There's this great misdirect when we see her with Adam Brody. What are you doing? And she stops, and then we just cut to her having the, quote, walk of shame home, and you see ketchup all over her, but it looks like blood for a second. You're like, she killed him. Because that's what audiences want to see, too. This is what we're trained to expect. We're trained to expect violence to come from the situation. Until the very end, she never lets it come to violence. She just...
Well, she might have, but we don't see it.
I don't think she does. I think we see what she does with the Chris Mintz-Plasse version, because we see everything that happens until she leaves. She just talks to him.
She stalks him. I love that.
Yeah, she follows him around physically, corners him, but all she's doing is holding a mirror up to his behavior and saying, no, but really, who are you? What kind of person are you? And he says, I'm the nice guy. Are you the nice guy? And she just calls every contradiction and every rationalization that he makes to convince himself that he wasn't doing anything wrong. That's her weapon.
What a dangerous job she's trying to pull here, though.
I know. It's kind of a fantasy that she wouldn't already be dead, but she is dead inside.
Yeah.
She is a person who decided years ago to give up her life. She is the angel of vengeance.
Hawking coffee and cornering men.
Yeah, but she's
who would do this to
she's
women?
An avenging angel, and I don't just say that, and I think that's my opinion. I think visually the movie tells us over and over again she's framed with furniture behind her that very clearly is making angel wings. There's several really prominent shots that give her a halo, probably most famously the shot she's in the coffee shop and there's the blue, beautiful little relief artwork there that makes this perfect halo around her head. She's not really a person anymore. She's become something else.
I also like the casting of the parents because Clancy Brown plays her dad, who's done a ton of things in his career. But most people who've seen a ton of movies are probably going to think first with him about Shawshank Redemption, where he plays this brutal prison guard. Yeah, he's in Starship Troopers too. Anyway, he's had a long career, but I think about Shawshank. And here he's a bland, basically boring dad. And then Jennifer Coolidge. We covered her in Best in Show and Legally Blonde. Now she's so famous for White Lotus and has done so many things in her career. But she, in this movie, deliberately, is dull.
Yeah.
Both of the parents are almost miscast, and that's part of the fun of it.
She's like a cartoon version of femininity, Jennifer Coolidge, right? She's this...
Not in this movie, but in other movies.
But in everything we've ever seen her in, Legally Blonde and Best in Show are probably the two things she was best known for before
American
White
Pie.
Lotus. Oh, and American Pie. Okay, yeah, but they all fit the example. She is this cartoon. She's like a Jessica Rabbit, right? So this hyper femininity that would explain why their house looks like it does, which would explain why Cassie naturally is drawn to ribbons and pink and rainbows and not just femininity, but very youthful, almost girly femininity.
Yeah. Okay, let's back way up then, and I'll do the what would have been the intro.
Oh, yeah.
Way deep in the podcast. We've covered most of the story, I think, at this point. Anyway, Rotten Tomatoes, love this movie. 90% of critics like this film. 8.1 out of 10 is the average. There are 419 reviews on the site and 87% of audiences. The movie was 37th at the 2020 US box office, which is, of course, always going to be skewed. Chris and I covered The Way Back for Scoring at the Movies, which is a really good movie. Ben Affleck's in that. That was 24th. That actually got released right before the pandemic. Soul we covered, but that only went out on Disney+. So it's a 2020 movie, and it won Oscars, and it's considered a movie, but that's because they changed the rules a little bit that year. And then Nomadland, I said this already, technically came out in 2021, but it won the Oscar for Best Picture and all the other awards for 2020, and we covered that too. We've already said this won the Oscar for Original Screenplay. Fennell is one of the few women to win the Original Screenplay Oscar. It also got 4 other nominations, Best Picture, Best Director. Fennell was a producer and, of course, the director. And then Carey Mulligan for Best Actress and Frederick Thorvald's editing, which a lot of people raved about as well. I thought it was a well-edited film. And, of course, Mulligan, if this isn't her best work, it's certainly up there. Although we covered Inside Llewyn Davis earlier this year, and that's probably still the funniest she's ever been. She's so funny, but so angry and so caustic. One of the reasons this film works is because, and this isn't a constant thing, but it's often enough in this almost 2-hour movie, A, it's entertaining, and B, it's often pretty funny.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the funniest moments, and I hate to say it, but it's just true, and 2 viewings proves it, is after fucking Al has choked her to death and then lays all night with her body, and his buddy comes in the room.
Yeah, Max
Their
Greenfield.
interaction is funny in a moment it shouldn't be. It's obviously intentional.
So I agree that it's funny, but I also think it's the biggest mistake in the film. I think Max Greenfield, who is very much playing over-the-top douchebag, that's the moment where the tone shifts too much. First of all, the entire movie's been exclusively from her perspective.
Right.
So it's a massive tone shift, not even just from her perspective, because you could make it a godlike perspective, and I think that would have worked better if you had something where it felt like it's her looking down in a way. She is an angel, right? I would buy it if there was something more ethereal about the way we see everything play out from then on.
Okay.
But no, it's from Al's perspective. It's from Ryan's perspective. The camera isn't really telling us to view it in any other way.
It's shot the same way.
Yeah, it's exactly shot the same way. And it's really jarring. Especially the first time I saw it, I was like, where is this film going? And it's too lighthearted. I agree with you. It's really funny. That whole moment, it's laid on pretty thick, but it does work, where he's like, this is not your fault. This is not your fault. I'm pretty sure it is.
Right.
Al knows. God, Al is such an interesting villain. I think it's implied that he really was an idiot kid.
Who may have only done this one thing ever, for all we know.
Yeah, who made some bad decisions and then smartened up, got his khakis and his golf shirt and his fiancée that he's so crazy about.
He didn't want the stripper to take him aside, and the suggestion being that he get a blowjob or fuck her. He didn't even want that.
And it's not even like he's like, guys, oh my God, my fiancé's gonna kill me. No, he was like, guys, cut it out. This is a bad idea. I don't want to hurt her.
Yeah.
He really wants to do the right thing for the right reasons, it seems, in that moment. But again, when self-preservation is the motivation, well, then a different side of him comes out.
But even that's hard to dispute, because when she's going to carve Nina into his chest, well, maybe she's not going to kill him if she's going to carve into his chest, because why do that? The notion would be that you're always going to see this on
it's kind of like
this guy's body.
Girl with the Dragon tattoo. She tattoos rapists on her rapist
But doesn't kill him,
chest.
yeah. But still, it is self-preservation, so it's hard to dispute that he would defend himself. And he's only got one arm. He chokes her to death. I'm not saying any of that's cool, but again, it's "but for the grace of God go I," that expression. If you're putting those shoes, all the woke people, I would never do that. Okay, let's see you put in those shoes.
If you watch this movie and you don't have sympathy for the villains, I don't know what movie you were watching, but it's why I love it. I love revenge. Still very much the feminine gaze, and a movie that I feel like transcends the more troubling aspects of revenge films.
But you're the one that says she belongs in jail still.
Jen does.
In revenge, yeah.
Well, she commits murder.
Yeah.
When she could have gone away.
She tries to kill them.
She definitely did not have to kill Richard. She had to kill the first two, but she doesn't have to kill Richard. For people who want to know what the hell we're talking about, please listen to our episode. Well, first watch Revenge, because it is such a great movie. And then listen to our episode talking about it. And don't you think Cassie belongs in jail?
Yeah, I guess
Just
so.
at the end, not for the stuff she does in
Well,
bars.
let's say her plan works. So she goes in there, she drugs all the other guys, so they're out for the night. She takes Al upstairs and handcuffs him to the bed so he can't resist. She reveals who she really is, reminds him of Nina. It's not like he pretends he doesn't know who she is, maybe for a few seconds, but then pretty quickly he remembers that name, which also suggests that if he ever actually listens to what's going on in Me Too, which the movie doesn't ever use that expression, but if it ever became a thing in this movie's world, you would think that he would at least have some guilt. He's not pretending he doesn't know what she's talking about. But when she's going to carve anything into his body, he's got to defend himself. But he's so human in that moment. So does she belong in jail for that? Because if she's not planning to kill him, but just carve up his body. So what's her point of view then? Okay, so he doesn't get free of the handcuffs. She carves Nina into his chest, and I guess she leaves. But then what? Because just like I said in Revenge, Jen has to worry that if she lets Richard live, that he's going to find her and kill her out of revenge.
Yeah.
And the same with this. So Cassie leaves. She succeeded. Ryan's told the cops, maybe because Cassie's missing. They don't know she's dead yet. But he said to them, she's disturbed. So she's lived and then carved this into somebody's body.
She doesn't care if she goes to prison.
I guess not.
She doesn't care what happens to her. She's
I'm just
risked her
trying
life
to put,
over
I'm
and
trying
over.
to put this together, though, because Revenge, I didn't really fully agree with you in that case. I think she actually maybe had to kill Richard to get out of there and stay alive and everything else. But in this, so she succeeds, and the body's got the carving, and she doesn't die, and she didn't kill any of those guys. But then how does life continue? Does she go to jail for what she did?
But what life does she have? She's given up her life.
No, but you're talking about, is she
almost gets her life back when she's falling in love with Bo Burnham, with
legit
Ryan.
falling in love, yeah.
She's letting it go. She throws away her book. She has that beautiful moment with Nina's mom. Well, it starts actually with Alfred Molina begging for forgiveness, and she kind of has this come to Jesus moment then.
Men can be redeemable.
Men can be redeemed. Oh, well, that changes everything. And then Nina's mom puts her over the edge to decide to choose life. So then she finds Ryan again and pursues a relationship with him, and that beautiful rom-com. God, I root for them so hard.
They're a cute couple.
Oh, I felt that love. She's a good director. This is a great screenplay, and she really knows how to manipulate an audience, make a very gripping movie to begin with. Like you said, it's incredibly entertaining. She could never pull this off if it wasn't a movie that you were on the edge of your seat, wrapped up in from beginning to end, because the subject matter is so difficult. You have to spoon it to us with like a lot of sugar to get us to sit here and be riveted by everything that happens. Even when you know, more so even, when you know what's going to happen next. This movie is so gripping. And I am so invested in their romance. So when that rug gets pulled out from her, it was pulled out for me too. And I'm just heartbroken. So then when she just decides to get right back on that downward spiral and go all the way down and maybe even do a revenge plan that was more extreme than the one she may have been originally planning, because it's mild, you know, she tricks Madison into believing that she was raped by this guy when she got too drunk.
That's another thing that's fascinating, by the way.
Oh, that was pretty
Two things
brutal.
that are fascinating. One, that the guy asks her, go through with it. She says no. But if she had said yes, then
What was he going to do?
she's authorizing for this guy to do something, even if just the suggestion that Madison's worried that, oh my God, and Madison maybe doesn't look at it that I was raped. Did I go too far with him when I was drunk?
Yeah.
And I didn't give consent. And maybe Madison doesn't look at that as a rape the way that our culture does now. So she, even just setting her up to think that, I'm defending Nina, but now I'm doing this to Madison. What happened to Nina in a different way, but similar enough.
Cassie's
And also
a bit of a villain herself.
Yes, and also lying to Connie Britton's character about her daughter being with 3 drunk guys. A very effective tool, but a mean thing to do. And maybe Connie Britton's character deserved that, and a lot worse, to even just think it for a few seconds that my daughter might be getting raped by 3 drunk guys right now. During the middle of the day, it probably wasn't that likely to be true, but she bought it for a second. And I forgot that that was the whole point, because we see Cassie get the daughter into her car first and pretend that the daughter was going to get to be with some famous people, so that's where she really is. I forgot what exactly went down there, and I thought, okay, you've lost me. Oh, wait, no, okay, right. Yes, she's pretending, and we can't reveal it because it's a movie. It's all about tricking Connie Britton, but also tricking us, too. In these two cases, using this as a weapon against two women, you're right, makes her a villain, too, which obviously Fennell did on purpose.
What do you think she was going to get that guy to do to Alfred Molina's character? Because she leaves his place and there's this creepy-looking, very hitman-looking dude chilling by the car. And she's like, I'm calling it off. And he's like, well, I'm going to get paid anyway. Yeah, okay, great. What was that guy going to do?
Well, I guess in that case, probably just fuck him up because I don't think he'd be raping him.
But she hasn't committed violence against anybody up until the point that she's about to carve Nina's name into Al's body. So at that point also, she's been supercharged because of the betrayal of Ryan, and then suddenly she's like, no, everyone's awful. I have to do something extreme.
But she's been a bit of a terrorist even before the thing at the end because of the suggestion that she would do something to Madison or have a guy do something to Madison.
And she's always
to Molina's character.
She's always so controlled and measured. Every time that she's with one of these guys, her weapon is that she never loses her cool, not even a little bit. But under that is this simmering rage.
And probably a lot of fear.
She doesn't seem afraid to me. I think she considers her life over anyway, which is why she doesn't want a promotion. So. There's no way she's going to go back to med school.
There's got to be some fear there sometimes,
doesn't want to move out of her parents' house. Maybe at the end when she's with Al, but in general, I don't see her express fear. But it's just this rage. An act of violence she does commit is when the stranger, the man, pulls up to her in
Nicholson
the car.
moment.
Yeah, and she just very calmly gets out, takes a tire iron, and bashes the shit out of his car. It actually is a pretty cathartic moment. I love that moment, but there's also...
What the guy says isn't worth getting his car destroyed,
No, of course not. Yes, she's overreacting. She is so filled with rage. Yeah. It's like this person who had a personality, who had friends, who had family who loved her. This trauma hollowed her out, and it was just replaced with anger. There's a beautiful line that breaks my heart when things are going well for her, and her father says to her, when Nina died, we were heartbroken. We missed her so much, but we missed you more.
Oh, the old her.
Okay, the old Cassie. Right. They missed Cassie. A trauma like this affects Nina, and then it affects Nina's mother, and it affects Nina's best friend. And when it affects Nina's best friend, it affects her parents. It affects everyone around them. There's branches of trauma that come out of this one terrible decision that these frat boys in med school made 10 years ago.
Because as bad as the rape was, then she committed suicide. Nina did.
Yeah, it's implied. I mean, we don't know that she did, but she did.
Oh, I thought the movie made that more clear.
I don't think so.
The promising young woman thing is a reference, by the way, to the Brock Turner assault. I was reading about this. I forgot this was the inciting incident for why this movie was made. I'm sure there's a lot of other things too, but this apparently was the biggest reason. So that was in 2016. He was convicted of assaulting the girl. I think it was the year before when he did it. But I guess what was said at the court case and why he got such a light sentence, because he was convicted, was he was a promising young man.
Yes.
And I believe also Connie Britton says that in the scene with Carey Mulligan.
Yeah, about, maybe I don't want to ruin this young man's life.
It may not have been those words, but that was the point. So promising young woman. And this movie really could have been called Promising Young Women. Because what Cassie's done to herself, well, okay, these guys made it happen, but Cassie's done some of this to herself, of course, too. Ruined her own life by being so obsessed and trying to right or wrong. But Nina and Cassie were in med school. If you can make it to med school, you got a shot at being a doctor. They probably would have graduated. I think they were both great students. The odds were very good. They'd both be outstanding doctors, and neither of them got to be that. Never mind the trauma of a rape, never mind the suicide and then Cassie destroying herself. Those are all terrible things, but also the world was robbed of two great doctors, probably.
Yeah. We know that Cassie's smart. She says that her whole life all she wanted to do was be a doctor. But when she describes Nina, she was like, I'm smart. But Nina was intimidatingly smart, just overwhelmingly impressive in everything about her. She was this incredible person. And so why should Al's promise be prioritized over Nina's promise, over Cassie's promise? It's a beautifully illustrated point. Oh, by the way, speaking of references, I read that the reason she's called Cassie is because she's named after Cassandra of Greek myth. Cassandra was a princess of Troy who was gifted with sight and could see the future, but was cursed with the fact that nobody would ever believe anything she said. So she says to her father, the king of Troy, listen, the Greeks are going to sack the city and they're going to murder you and they're going to murder every one of your family one by one, and this is going to happen. Everyone's like, okay, hush, hush, whatever.
The sky is not falling. Although the man that she's involved with is the sky, basically, because he's 9 feet tall. He's also a pediatric surgeon. I like that he works with kids. And then I guess his life is ruined too because, what was he going to be arrested though exactly?
No, but he would be shamed. You know, the video is obviously going to come out and he's going to be seen in it, especially because he works with kids. She says when she threatens him with the video, you work with kids. This probably wouldn't be great for people to see you doing this. And he lied to the police.
He told her about the bachelor party because he knew where it was, but he lied that he knew anything about any of this at all. He admitted he dated her, and that's about as far as it went.
Again, motivated by self-preservation.
Yeah.
There, but for the grace of God, go I.
Right. It's also interesting that they have Friender in this movie. That's what she deletes, not Facebook or Friendster. Is that what it was called? Friendster, right? MySpace, of course.
Friendster was the very first.
Right, but it's Friender, and it's also spelled Frender, and does throw away the notebook as well before she goes back to being the avenging angel when she goes to confront Al. But one of my biggest problems with the ending has always been, how does this all work out? They burn the body, and the necklace is found that says Nina, but then the other half of it, wait, is it Cassie that's on the ground and Nina's in the register at the coffee shop?
She wears the Nina necklace all the time.
And then Cassie's found.
She gives it to...
A Twin Peaks reference probably, by the way.
Oh, yeah, maybe. A lot of girls had those best friend necklaces with the two sides of the heart.
So where's the proof? Because the cops come to arrest the groom on his wedding day. It's like getting arrested on your wedding day. But anyway, at the end of that, I didn't really ever buy it. It's cathartic. There's a lot of great things about that some of these people pay. Yeah, Ryan will have to feel more guilt than he ever did before. At least guilt, we hope.
Might suffer his career as well.
And the best man and the groom are probably going to jail, except I do have a what happens next. The rich guys, they're not staying in jail for long. They'll get off. Because partly, how do you prove that they burned this body that was found?
We can all imagine what this trial would look like. That Al could afford good enough lawyers to basically say, well, she handcuffed him. She was crazy. Look at all these other things she did. We have all these other men that can attest to her.
All these things you're saying are true.
Them. Yeah, honestly, I could believe that he was in fear for his life.
And a world that doesn't believe women, too.
Yeah, so you know how it just takes forever for him to kill her. Emerald Fennell's father-in-law was a cop. So she was like, how long would it actually take to smother somebody? He said, about 2.5 minutes. So that scene happens for 2.5 minutes because that's how long it would actually take for her to lose consciousness and die.
Bit of a Hitchcock reference then, too, because in the movie with Paul Newman and Julie Andrews, what was that one again? Torn Curtain, maybe, in the mid-'60s? I think it's Newman has to kill somebody, and it takes forever. Yeah. Because that's more real.
So we have to watch the actual real agonizing time it would take, and at some point, he has time to think about what he's doing. Instead, he just doubles down. He's got his knee on her face, and he's saying, stop moving, stop moving. And there's a panic in him, but it's not just a panic that she's going to hurt him, because he's already overpowered her. It's a panic that she's going to tell on him, that she's going to blow up his life. So it's not just, I have to stop her from hurting me in the moment. It's, I have to stop her from...
Ever hurting me, from
telling people that there's a video blowing up this great thing I've got going on.
But what about the proof of the body? Is there really any to
there's a shot of her hand with the nails, so that doesn't burn up. But also, I think
those guys aren't very thorough.
No,
they are rushed, I guess.
For people who graduated med school, you think they would have a better understanding of how to get rid of a body, but she's missing. There is the evidence that she sent to Alfred Molina's place.
Right.
So that gives them the time and place that she was there. There's the necklace they find, but even if you didn't believe that the necklace would have survived that fire, I feel like just they would put together that it was her. And if there's a hand, there you go. There's fingerprints. Okay. They find fingerprints in her room or whatever.
Okay, that's interesting. I never really thought of those things. I should have probably, but I didn't really fully buy the ending. But it is also a little convenient, and it is a movie, and it was not the original ending she planned in the first place. And we've already said that we have issues with it, but there's also a catharsis in there that you have to respect, too. It's like Revenge, her going back and actually killing Richard. Maybe she didn't really need to do that in the end. I think she did. You don't think she did so much. But that movie really can only end that way at the same point.
Of course, yeah. She has to kill Richard.
So I'd mentioned Carey Mulligan. We covered in Inside Llewyn Davis earlier this year. Also, she was in Drive with Oscar Isaac. And, of course, co-starring with him in Inside Llewyn Davis. You said Bo Burnham directed The Great Eighth Grade. Man, I love that movie so much. But he's mostly done TV-type things as TV roles and that kind of stuff. He hasn't directed, I don't think, since 8th grade, which was 5 years ago.
And I always think of him chiefly as a performer. Stand-up, musical comedy, the specials that he does.
Maybe he'll be one of those guys that directs 3 things in his entire life when he's 75 years old. Alison Brie is a voice in 2 Lego movies, and also, I think, best known for TV because of course, Community, where she's so lovable, but also Glow, which we liked and ended abruptly, and Christopher Lowell is in that with her as Bash, the guy who runs, or owns, I guess, Glow. Mintz-Plasse was in Superbad and the Kick-Ass movies. Adam Brody was in The Ring, which we covered many years ago, and also a few of the Scream films. Alfred Molina was not only Carey Mulligan's dad in An Education, but also we covered him in Boogie Nights with that one-of-a-kind scene, and then Spider-Man 2. So that's a pretty rich dichotomy of performances we've covered from Alfred Molina. In this, though, he really is reminding me of the character in Women Talking. Who plays him again? Ben Whishaw. He's got to be the one that not only is cool with women, or at least at this point now, who's doing the right thing and saying the right thing, but is just so grovelly that if he dared to have an opinion that wasn't exactly what the woman in this case, or the women in Women Talking think, he'd be fucking castrated. And that's fine, but there's a part of me that feels like, okay, but he's still a person. He doesn't have to agree with everything these people say, this woman or these people, in these two movies' cases.
They don't give him anything to agree with. He's just sorry for his actions.
Molina is, yes. I'm thinking about the Ben Whishaw comparison more so, where he's the stenographer who
okay.
never has a mind of his own. But that's a good movie, but I did have a bit of an issue with that. And Connie Britton, who we've never covered before, I don't think, but Chris and I did when we did Friday Night Lights and Squaring at the Movies. She's Billy Bob's wife in that film.
A role she reprised in the TV show.
Right, which I never saw. I should have watched it, never did. Fennell, the writer, director, and producer. This was her debut as a director, and I don't see anything else, I don't think, since. No, she's doing Saltburn. That's what it's called, Saltburn. That's in post. Mulligan's in that, so is Rosamund Pike. Ooh. Gone Girl. We'll do Revenge Month again next year. I don't know if we will, but if we do, we'll have to do Gone Girl, I guess, right?
Love Gone Girl.
And Barry Keoghan, I guess is how you say it. We've been saying it wrong.
Oh, that's how you say it?
12 different ways. Keegan, Keown. I don't know. Apparently it's Keoghan. That's what I was hearing recently. Because, of course, he was in Banshees of Inisherin and was
so it's
nominated for an
actually
Oscar.
pronounced how it's spelled then.
Yes, which is unusual for Irish people, yeah.
For once, an Irish name.
But that's apparently her next movie, Fennell's next film. She was a producer along with Ashley Fox, Josie McNamara, Ben Browning, and then Margot Robbie, who wasn't nominated for an Oscar, but is a producer on this, and you see it in the opening credits. And most of those people I just mentioned were nominated for Oscars. The movie's 2 through 9 to 1. It was on Netflix. The cinematographer, Benjamin Krakoon, or maybe it's not Krakoon, Kracun, Krassoon, I don't know. He shot a lot of shorts, but also I love this. In the span of a year or two, he shot Beast and Beats. Something called Beast, something called Beats. The cutter, the Oscar-nominated guy, Frederick Thorvald, did cut Sinister and The Black Phone, a movie I haven't watched yet, but is on our PVR right now. So 2 horror films, and this has horror elements in a lot of ways. And the composer Anthony Willis did the music for Megan, which we haven't seen, but we will.
And we have to give credit to the soundtrack, because this is an incredible, top-notch soundtrack of pop music, perfectly selected, starting with that Charlie XCX song, Boys, that gets us started in that nightclub, Angel of the Morning,
Juice Newton.
Paris Hilton song.
Angel of the Morning takes me back to when I was a kid.
Yeah. Everybody loves the Paris Hilton song in this movie, but I feel like not enough credit is given to that string arrangement of Toxic when she's approaching the bachelor party.
Okay, yeah.
It takes you a minute to even realize what song it is.
Oh, the Britney Spears song?
Yeah. Britney Spears and Paris Hilton were both sexy, girly pop stars that were very heavily maligned in the aughts around the time that the rape is supposed to have taken place. So another very intentional choice. Great songs, too.
And, of course, these guys are going to get off. That is the what happens next, because that's what happens to privileged, rich, white guys.
But they'll still feel like their lives were ruined.
Yeah, well, if they feel some kind of guilt, at least that's some kind of justice and revenge. It may not be enough. It's not enough, especially since they literally murdered somebody. Nina killed herself. Is it Al's fault that she did? Yeah, but it is more indirect when you do kill yourself. But these two, well, it's not even these two. Al killed Cassie, and then, what's his name again? Max Greenfield's character.
What is
Joe. It is Joe.
Okay.
He helped cover it up, so they belong in jail. But believe women is not something that a lot of guys do, especially when it comes to courts. So I'm not sure these guys are going to really pay. But I think that's what Fennell is doing too. Even with the ending that she didn't originally want, I think she sees how that works, though, at the same point, which is, yes, justice is served for now.
It's going to be another Brock Turner. He'll spend 6 months in prison and feel like he was punished more than he deserved.
The victim
to be
of
punished.
all time. Yeah.
And it would definitely be a very public case, and you know that there would be lots of supporters of Al trying to break down and excuse his behavior and rationalize it.
This is one of those movies, too, I'd love to see other characters in their lives. I've said this on Tarantino films before, because he has such a rich screenplay. A person that's barely been in the film, like the Gimp, for example. Who was that beforehand? What does Adam Brody do after what happened to him in the opening scene with Carey Mulligan? What does Sam Richardson do after the scene where he was going to take her home and he finds out she was just faking it the whole time? And then she reveals in that scene that there's a woman that hurts guys in these situations.
Well, she's making it up. Do you believe that? I think she's just saying that to scare him so that
Okay.
he...
Which is effective enough.
Yes, more effective.
It's like Batman. He may not come for you, but he's out there.
You called her Batman in the movie, and I feel like that's a perfect thing. A trauma defined her, totally blew up her life. She has no personality other than her reaction to this trauma. She's this vigilante, this justice dispensing angel who doesn't hurt people, you know, like Batman never kills people. So
I said to you,
there's lots of parallels.
I said to you as well, there's got to be times when she's been doing this for all this time that a guy does say, I'm going to take you home. You'll be okay. And he does take her home.
It must happen sometimes.
Helps her into the house, maybe even the bedroom. She hears the door close and goes, fuck. Gotta go back out again and do another one. It's already 1 a.m. I thought I had this asshole. He was an okay guy.
Door closes, she's calling an Uber.
Right. Gotta go back to work.
It must
I'm not done for the night. But that guy really was. I hope that girl's okay. She was pretty loaded. All right, last thoughts on Promising Young Woman.
Well, I gotta say, second viewing, I am now a full-blown advocate for this film. It's intelligent, it's beautifully made, but it also has something really fresh and important to say.
I like it quite a bit too, and I don't have a problem with it not being perfect. In fact, maybe that makes the movie better, because it probably shouldn't be perfect. It is entertaining. There are some laughs. It's weird that they come at the end of the movie when our hero, if she isn't a hero, our main character at least, has been killed. But I like the complications. It makes the movie better. In a world of premeditated revenge, Fennell's film certainly found a creative way to right a wrong. It's also about as thought-provoking as any film we'll probably discuss this year. And let's not forget Carey Mulligan, who was nominated, is first rate.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Frances McDormand had won twice already, and won twice the night of these Oscars, because she produced Nomadland and won for Nomadland. I guess in the end I wish she'd won for Nomadland and Fargo and not that I have a problem with her winning 4 Oscars and 3 for acting, but she maybe shouldn't have in retrospect won for 3 Billboards, because it was a good performance. But Nomadland's even better. But if it wasn't going to be her this year, and I forget the other nominees, maybe I'm overlooking somebody just as worthy or even more so than McDormand or Mulligan. But Mulligan, this is outstanding work. This is maybe the best thing she's done.
There are so many micro expressions that tell a whole world of information. A great example I can think of is the moment when she's having that very cute date with Ryan, and then at the end he's like, oh, hey, look, it's my apartment. Maybe you want to come upstairs. And the way her face turns on just this really subtle note of going from charmed to not just disappointment. She was starting to believe in the world, and it was taken away from her in that moment, but she doesn't want him to know, but she tells the audience through just the subtlest acting. It's so beautiful. She is an excellent actress.
So this ends Revenge Month. Of course, we talked about Revenge, the movie Revenge, quite a bit here. Coralie Fargeet's movie. Quentin Tarantino's Death Proof was this month. Now Promising Young Woman. I also talked about Cat Ballou and Working Girl on My Own. Your favorite of, I guess, the 3 that you saw.
Oh, it's got to be Promising Young Woman.
Really? My favorite would be Revenge. Of all the 5 I covered.
It's close, but Promising Young Woman.
They're all good. The ones I chose aren't really quite in the vein of this, but I wanted to cover movies that won Oscars and or were on AFI lists, and that's one reason I did choose them. And they do fit the genre, but the 3 you and I covered certainly fit it a lot more. And maybe we'll do this exact same theme again next year. Gone Girl, a movie you probably want to cover anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Will be 10 years old next year. But anyway, for the first time this year, we won't have a theme month. May will just be May. Our movie choices are going to be all over the map, so when we talk to you on May the 1st, we'll be changing gears from all this anger and vengeance and having a little fun, although there was fun in this movie at least, talking about Finding Nemo. The coming attractions trivia for Finding Nemo. There have been 4 Toy Story films and 2 Finding films, so Nemo and its sequel Dory. By every measure, all 6 movies have succeeded, but which of those 2 franchises has the biggest hit adjusted for inflation, and which has the best reviews on Rotten Tomatoes? I've done this kind of thing before for a coming attractions question for a Pixar movie. I don't know why I couldn't find anything better, because there's a lot of trivia about this film. But there you go. What was the biggest hit of all those 6 movies, and what was the best reviewed?
So for the answer to that question, check out next week's podcast about Finding Nemo. You obviously already know how to find us, but let me remind you to favorite or subscribe wherever you listen. We're both on Twitter. I'm at Bev Ellis Ellis, and Ryan is at MovieFiend51. And you can also reach us by email, haveyoueverseenpodcast@gmail.com. You can find our podcast on YouTube now. Our channel is at HYES Ellis. And to enjoy freshly roasted premium coffee delivered straight to you in Canada and the US, please go to sparkplug.coffee/HYES and enjoy a 20% discount.
What are you doing? What are you doing? You going to say cut?
Cut.